Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and is the electrochromatic mirror in your BMW failing? Let me show you how you can change it. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit before we do the work and the reasons why. And what do you mean the electrochromatic rear view mirror? It's your rear view mirror that automatically changes at night for you, and it starts to look like this. It's like the surface starts to peel or it starts to fail somewhere in the glass itself. Now, the one challenge with a little bit older BMWs, and this 2000 M5 is an absolute amazing car and is perfect from bumper to bumper, but the mirror is starting to fail, which is a bit of a bummer. Now, the other challenge that you have here is that these are almost impossible to get now. So just ordering the whole mirror assembly is not necessarily an answer. Now, if you can find it and that's what you want to do, go for it. Now, the other option that you can do is actually change the mirror itself. It is possible to get replacement glass, and then you're gonna have to do a little bit of additional work because of the electronics on the inside of that mirror, the electrochromatic part, right? So let me show you how to take your mirror off. It's really simple, and I'm going to show you probably the easiest way of doing it where you don't even have to take the mirror stock off entirely. But let's jump in the car, let's take a look at it. All right, y'all, so it is possible to take the entire mirror off, and then you can take the mirror face off itself. But I actually think it's going to be easier just to take the face off and leave the stock in place. Now, really quickly, if you wanted to take the entire mirror off, you'd take a plastic trim tool, you'd work it between the split in the cover that goes around the neck on your mirror. You work it in on the bottom, pop it open, move your mirror, get into the top, pop it open, and then you can pull both halves of the cover away. You've got a plug right here at the top. You'd want to unplug that. Then you would take very gently, you'd take the entire mirror and turn it 45 degrees right. Don't push it or pull on it. You just gently turn about 45 degrees right, and then it'll come off the connection to the windshield. So you can do that. You can absolutely do that, especially if you're changing out your entire mirror. Your other option, of course, is just to take the mirror face off itself. And you can do that by just working a trim tool into and in between, because right here, this crack is your mirror face. And all you need to do is just work a trim tool in, and you can work it and get the entire mirror face to come away. Now, when it does, you're gonna have your mirror and a circuit board that's plugged in here at the back of the mirror. You wanna unplug that, and then you can just take this and take it to your workbench, which is what we're going to do next. All right, guys, so you have to forgive my workbench is a bit of a mess right now, but I've kind of got set up for what we need to do. So here is the base, or the mirror that you got off. You got the stock off the window or off the windshield. You've used your plastic trim tool to work around and get the face off. Now, in theory, you could have done this in the car as well. You could have worked your plastic trim tool in and taken the face off, and everything you need would have come off. If that works for you, don't hesitate to give it a shot. What you will do is when the face comes out, you've got a plug from the back. It's this plug right here that you're going to want to, as the face comes out, you're going to want to unplug it from the circuit board. Okay, so I've done a couple of things in a little bit of prep work just to get us set and ready to go here. So here is the new mirror. Obviously here's the old one that's bad, but the one thing that we've got to do is we've got to transfer this plate and the circuit board to the new one. So it has a thin layer of double-sided adhesive that sits back behind this all, and we have to cut it off. Now, the other thing that we have to ensure is that it goes back in the exact same place. Because if you look, it's got the sensor that's on the back of your mirror, it's got the sensor on the front. This plate has got to be in the exact same location on the new glass. So what I've done is I've just taken a paper towel, and you can take any piece of paper. I've drawn the outline, and then I drew where the edges of this plate is, here and here. So when I go to put it back on, I can take the new glass, put it right in the same spot, and line up the plate in the exact same orientation. So the other thing that I've done is I went out and I found some double-sided adhesive. This is, as far as strength, is massive overkill for what the weight of that little thing is. It also was the thinnest I could find. So this is 3M double-sided adhesive that's good on glass and porcelain and metal. It is as thin as I can get, because this, it's going to be difficult to see, but you can see that white adhesive is basically like probably less than paper thin, and this is a little bit more than paper thin. We've got a finite amount of space that we have to deal with, so we have to be careful about that. Now, here's the other complication that we have to deal with. Now, if you notice, we've got a red wire that comes down and is soldered to the mirror here. So that's going to be power, and then we've got a ground wire that comes down and is soldered here. So we're going to need to free these wires off the existing mirror. You can always use your soldering iron and just heat that back up and pull the wires off. There's enough length here on the wires, you might be able to just clip them and do it again. I'm going to heat it up and take it off so I don't lose any material. Now, I'll be the first one to say I don't solder very often, pretty rarely, candidly. But this is about as simple as you can get to solder back in place. There may be better ways of doing it. I'm not an expert in soldering. So I'm just going to heat this up, get both wires free on both sides, and then get it transferred onto the new one and solder those wires back in place. There's some great videos out there on how to basic solder. I mean, the short version is you don't heat up the solder with a soldering iron, you actually heat up the material. So I'll mark and find the right place, and I'll very gently heat it up, and I'll put the wire there, and I'll put the solder there and melt the solder into place, and then adhere down the circuit board back here to the new glass. So let me take that in stages. So the first thing I'm going to do is free these wires on both sides. And then what I've done is I've started to free the adhesive. I've taken a very narrow knife and I've cut and got between the metal plate and the adhesive. Now, I'm doing this not the safest manner right at the moment. I did it better when I'm just demoing right now. Don't cut yourself. But I just got a knife edge underneath the edge of this metal plate right here, like that, and started to cut it free. So then I'm going to use fishing line and get fishing line underneath this and just work my way down the mirror to cut it free of the adhesive. Okay, so let's do this first. So do the wires, get them free, get the plate off of the adhesive. Okay, so let's catch up here really quickly. So my soldering iron is still hot. So all I did was I just took the tip of the soldering iron and touched it to the top of the wire right here where it meets the solder, while applying a little bit of positive pressure, pulling back on the wire, and just bink, it popped right off. It's not like you have to melt all of the solder off. All you need to do is just heat up the wire enough to come loose of the solder. So once that was done, and you can tell I got the circuit board off. So obviously a tremendous amount of this adhesive plate here. Now, here's what I found. I found that the fishing line was not strong enough. I'd go 1/4 of an inch and I'd break it, and it really was a huge hassle. So here's what I'm going to recommend. Now, what you're going to want is I don't even remember what I have this tool for. It's a very, very, very thin bladed knife, and you might be able to use an X-Acto blade as well, because that's going to be very sharp and very thin, but the blade on it maybe not quite as long. So what I did is I worked this under the edge, as I showed just a few moments ago, kind of worked it under the edge, but then I started to work it down through the adhesive. When I started to get the gap between the plate and the adhesive, I have again, one of my plastic trim tools. It's narrow plastic. I wedged this in like this to apply a little bit of positive pressure and slowly start peeling this away. Now, this has enough adhesive on it that I'm going to be honest with you, I'm just going to straight out not use the adhesive I got. I'm going to try this, because I suspect, and as long as I don't keep touching it or stick it down to something, that this is going to be sticky enough to keep it in place on the new one, more than sticky enough. Okay, which is great, because then we don't have to worry about the thickness of the adhesive. But I worked this underneath, just work it, and slowly pried it up, and was very patient. This is plastic, it's not metal. You don't want to break it, you don't want to break the circuit board or anything like that. Okay, so be very, very gentle when you do that. Now, we have my template I laid out, right? So what you're going to want to do is, and this is my template that I used for the new glass. So I want to take it and lay it on the template, and then I'm going to take my board and lay it down exactly where the lines of my template show, just like that. And I'm going to be careful and not stick it down too firmly yet, because I want to make sure that my alignment is correct. Like, I've got a little bit of overlap right there that I don't want, because you want it not only in the correct alignment front and back, but you want it twisted and straight as well. Now with the curve, with the way the plastic is laid out, it's pretty obvious on where it needs to, if it needs to twist it all in place. That looks about good. Okay, so then I'm going to very gently press this down. And like I said, my suspicion is that the remainder of the adhesive is more than enough to keep this in place. Okay, so the other thing you could always do if you really wanted to is you could always put a little bit of adhesive or tape on these exposed edges on the top and bottom to help make sure that that stays down. But I feel pretty confident that this is going to stay. If your adhesive tears or doesn't come off as cleanly as mine did, then you're gonna need to use something else to keep it in place. It doesn't have to be very strong. This whole the circuit board and the piece of plastic weigh next to nothing, so you'll just have to be careful with that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to reattach these wires in the same positions that they were in on the new glass. So what we'll do is we'll heat up the edge a little bit, we'll take a solder, we'll heat up the edge a little bit, we'll heat up the wire a little bit, drip on a little bit of solder, and just get this soldered into place on both sides. All right, so stuck down firmly into place. I'm sure that previous adhesive is going to hold. Like I said, you're going to have to find some yourself. I used that 3M if this hadn't held. And then I was able to solder the wires back into the same position. I just used your typical leaded solder. Real quick touch, warm up the spot, dab it with solder, get the wire intact and in the same place. And the orientation of this plate should be right, so because we've got that photo sensor that looks to the front, we've got the that looks towards the driver, we've got that sensor that looks towards the front of the car. So now all you need to do is put it back into the frame. So all you need to do is just grab the frame, and which is here, like this, and make sure that you get that sensor, that little small sensor that's facing the driver. And these wires they strike me as fragile, so be careful. Okay, so very carefully get this back into the frame like that, and I'm just gently pushing it into place. It should fit just fine. I'm going to make sure this little sensor is pressed forward, and so it's sitting in that little alcove as it should just fine. Okay, so now with that set, all you need to do is grab the base, plug the cable back into the circuit board, and in the correct orientation, snap the face back on. And at that point, I mean, the hardest part is done. Then all you have to do is put this back in the car. That's going to be the same way you took it out. So let me put it back in the correct orientation with the button here at the bottom. So again, go back up to your windshield, put this on at about a 45-degree angle, make sure that it sits flush. You can tell if the teeth on this aren't right, and then just turn it back down to that base normal 6 o'clock position. And then you're fine. Plug in the cable, put the covers back on, and you're done. Congrats, you just fixed your mirror. All right, so all done as you can see. So put whatever few tools you got out, go ahead and put them away. This really is not hard at all. And then just takes a little bit of simple soldering and a soldering iron, a cheap one, because I use a soldering iron about once every 3 years. So, I mean, I got the $10 soldering iron. You don't need anything expensive. And it's really that simple. If you need any advice on how to solder, there's some great videos out on YouTube, but it really is as simple as very carefully heating up the thing that, like the metal component or where you want it stuck to, and then putting the solder to the heated part, right? The heated wire in this case. So, and I'm sure that there's even better ways of doing it. I don't claim to be an expert in soldering, but something simple like that, just a wire to a little metal piece, is not all that hard. So, really straightforward. I hope this gave you the confidence to do this project yourself. The blown back mirror really sucks, and I mean, it's an appearance thing, it's a safety thing, and it's really not that hard to fix. Everything you need will be listed in the description below, so make sure to check that out. Also, please make sure to click subscribe and the little alarm bell on the video. It makes a huge difference to my channel, and I always have tons of new content coming. It's going to be an amazing summer, let me tell you. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video.